My golden brother tricked our parents for their house. I exposed him, and now he's left homeless. My name is Lisa, and I'm 27. If I had to condense my life into a few sentences, it would read like a story of being perpetually second best, playing a role in a script where the leading part was always reserved for someone else. From as far back as I can remember, Sam, my older brother who is now 30, was the star in our family's little drama. The golden child with a magnetic smile that seemed capable of drawing admiration from the toughest crowd. It was as if he could step into a room and the world would hold its breath just to watch him. To my parents, Sam was the dream realized. Handsome, confident, ambitious, an embodiment of every success they wanted to showcase. He had that uncanny ability to charm teachers, friends, colleagues, and even strangers with a single grin, and he wielded it like a king's scepter. And me? I was the silent figure lingering on the edges, the afterthought that followed the dazzling comet's trail. I wasn't invisible, not exactly. I just existed in that space that never quite touched brilliance. My achievements were mine, sure, but they were like whispers next to Sam's thunderous applause. I worked hard, pushed myself through long nights and endless hours of studying, and even earned my place in college with honors. I thought, this is it. This will make them see me. But when the news broke, their response was a brief smile and a nod before they pivoted to discussing Sam's new car, another trophy in his gallery of victories. Picture it. The culmination of years of effort, reduced to a side note, an afterthought eclipsed by something shiny and new. The quiet humiliation sank deep, making me question whether they even knew that pride could apply to me. Did they realize I was trying too? That every ounce of effort I put in was driven by a hope to be more than just a supporting act in Sam's endless show? As the years passed, I adapted. I learned to push my resentment down until it became part of my internal decor, tucked into the corners of my mind like an old piece of furniture you can't throw out. I perfected my mask. Indifference stitched with sarcasm, smiles edged with irony. I'd learned to laugh at myself before others had the chance. The moments that stung became fodder for jokes, as if humor could numb the sting. But life has a peculiar way of blindsiding you, of turning a predictable sitcom into a gripping drama without warning. It was an ordinary evening, halfway through another week that felt interchangeable with the last, when I stumbled upon the truth. Sam, the family's untouchable, my parents' pride and joy, was not as untarnished as he seemed. Behind the charm and smiles, he had been manipulating our parents. I discovered documents that revealed he'd convinced them to sign over the deed to the house, our home, the place that held echoes of childhood laughter and teenage fights, of stories whispered after dark and silent moments shared. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just any house. It was our anchor. The testament to my parents' hard work, the history that defined our family. But to Sam, it was just another piece on his board, another move to secure his position and keep his narrative spotless. The Golden Boy wasn't just a star. He was the author of his own story, and everyone else, me, my parents, were merely props to serve his ambition. Picture it. A typical Saturday, sunlight pouring through the windows, and birds outside chirping as if rehearsing a symphony. There I was, Lisa, 27, valiantly wielding a vacuum cleaner, shuffling around the living room to help Mom with her never-ending quest for cleanliness. The perfect family tableau. That was until I passed by Dad's study, a cluttered shrine to forgotten decades, packed with yellowed newspapers from 2001 and an old pen collection gathering dust. Normally, it was a no-go zone, but today, something was different. A pile of papers lay carelessly on the desk, practically begging for a peek. So, of course, I didn't just walk by. I flipped over the top page, not expecting anything earth-shattering. But there it was, Sam's name, bold and unapologetic, practically jumping off the page as if I'd stumbled onto the front page of The Sam Show. My eyes skimmed the text, my pulse hammering faster with every line. The documents were about the house, our house. And guess whose name was on the deed? Sam's. What the actual hell? My heart did an impressive freefall into the pit of my stomach, and my hands went icy, as if I'd dunked them in a glacier. Mom and Dad hadn't so much as dropped a hint about selling the place, or even thinking of transferring ownership. But here it was, in black and white. The signatures scrawled at the bottom looked odd, as if a first grader had taken up the fine art of forgery. Notes were scribbled along the margins, cryptic enough to make my head spin. It screamed shady, more than just your average family misunderstanding. And then my inner voice, laced with sarcasm, piped up. Maybe your brother's secretly a mastermind, Lisa. Suddenly, everything started clicking into place, forming a picture I wasn't sure I wanted to see. The golden boy, the Teflon brother whose charm always got him out of tight spots, had clearly decided that playing by the rules was optional. This wasn't just another episode in the ongoing series of Sam Wins Again. This was betrayal. I felt an unfamiliar fire flare up inside me, a sharp jolt that chased away the initial shock. Not today, Sam. This wasn't going to slide under the radar. It was time for answers, and someone, whether it was him or my parents, was going to give them to me. The next evening had all the makings of high drama. Dad was conveniently absent, off at one of his meetings with friends, that everyone knew translated to whiskey-soaked story sessions at Joe's bar. It was the perfect setup for what I now dubbed Family Secrets Unveiled. I found Mom seated in the living room, fingers wrapped around a cup of tea, staring into the middle distance with an expression that screamed, "Where did it all go wrong?" I drew a deep breath, bracing myself, and dropped onto the chair across from her. My gaze was direct, cutting through the tense silence. "Mom, why is the house in Sam's name? Do you know what he plans to do with it?" The reaction was instant. Her face went so pale I half expected her to dematerialize on the spot. For a second, she looked around, eyes darting as if expecting FBI agents to pop out from behind the curtains. "Sam said it would be best for all of us," she murmured, voice thin as tissue paper. "He told us he could help with finances, that he'd protect us." The words came out barely audible, almost like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. She couldn't meet my eyes. Of course he did. Sam and his silver tongue, weaving another elaborate fairy tale. I felt a surge of anger light up my veins, hot enough to make me want to hurl that delicate teacup to the floor, just to break the suffocating tension. "Help with finances?" I said, my voice laced with sarcasm so thick it could have cut glass. "Mom, that sounds like asking the fox to babysit the chickens." But she just exhaled, a tired, defeated sound, and went back to staring into her cup as though it held the answers to life's greatest mysteries. And there it was. The grand reveal. Sam had positioned himself as the benevolent hero, convincing our parents to hand him the key to the kingdom while disguising it as a noble sacrifice. He wasn't protecting anyone but himself. The house, the heart of our childhood, was just another trophy to add to his collection. And me? I was meant to watch from the sidelines, another minor character in his triumph. Except, not this time. Not anymore. Sam might have thought we were all pawns in his game, but I was ready to flip the board. The following week, I unofficially became the star of my own detective series. No trench coat or magnifying glass, just sheer determination and an itch to rip the truth out of the shadows. My strategy was straightforward: dig deep, find the dirt, and make Sam realize he picked the wrong sister to double-cross. The operation began with me buried under a pile of family files, old letters and notes drenched in the scent of dust and forgotten promises. If papers had a voice, these would be croaking, "Lisa, toss us out already. We're done." But the deeper I dug, the more intense it became. I swapped paper trails for the digital maze, scrolling through social media, piecing together comments and breadcrumbs that could lead me to my big break. Just when the voice of doubt started whispering that maybe I was being paranoid, I struck gold. Messages between Sam and his lawyer. And not just any lawyer. That lawyer. The one who always looked like he'd just waltzed out of a Wall Street boardroom, born in an expensive suit with a grin sharp enough to cut through pretense. Their exchange was all about maneuvering around legal obstacles to secure the house transfer. I read the texts and thought, seriously, Sam? Did you model your plan off some hackneyed soap opera villain? The more I combed through, the clearer the picture became. Sam, the flawless golden child, had leveraged our parents' trust, constructing a scheme so audacious that even reality TV's worst wouldn't dare script it. This wasn't just about brick and mortar. It was about legacy, about the essence of what our parents worked for. And Sam, with his perfect smile and perfect lies, was ready to strip that away for his own gain. "You sly fox, Sam," I whispered, my voice low and vibrating with something sharper than anger. This was no longer a game of sibling one-upmanship. It was a war for justice, for truth, and to make sure that this polished con artist knew that his reign of impunity had officially met its reckoning. Friday night, the perfect backdrop for shattered facades and long overdue confrontations. I called Sam, my tone dripping with casualness, the kind reserved for coffee catch-ups and innocent chit-chat. But beneath the surface, I was coiled, ready to drag his so-called golden reputation through the filth it deserved. He didn't make me wait long, walking in with that trademark grin that had grated on my nerves for as long as I could remember. "What's up, sis? Something important?" His voice was light, eyebrows raised with that practiced air of superiority, as if he were doing me a favor just by showing up. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I let the silence stretch before laying out the evidence. Printed messages, legal documents, all the damning pieces that transformed the room from our living room to the scene of a high-stakes showdown. His smirk dissolved faster than morning dew under the sun. The color drained from his face, leaving behind a blank canvas of shock. But Sam, ever the smooth talker, wasn't one to let panic settle in for long. Within a heartbeat, he was back, posture straightening as he tried to slip into his calm, collected persona. "You don't know what you're talking about, Lisa. You've always been too dumb for this kind of thing." He spat, his voice laced with condescension. "Ah, so now I was dumb? Perfect." I uncrossed my arms, leaning forward, my stare cutting straight through his mask. "Please, Sam, enlighten me," I said, sarcasm curling each word. "Tell me what it's like to be such a shameless, conniving thief." He flinched. Just a flicker, but enough. The air in the room shifted, crackling with an unspoken acknowledgement that this wasn't just another spat. His usual smirk faltered. The charm that always got him a free pass was useless now. The silence between us grew heavier, a palpable tension signaling that this conversation wasn't just an exchange. It was a declaration. This was me, making my move on the board, set to tip his king and claim victory. Sunday. Family dinner, once a tradition, now set to become a battlefield. My parents sat at the table, blissfully unaware, smiles plastered on their faces as though convinced the evening would end in laughter and light. Sam sat across from me, his grin still smug, his fingers drumming a confident beat on the tabletop. And me? I had the papers hidden on my lap, my chest tight with anticipation, an invisible vice squeezing tighter by the second. This is it, Lisa. Your moment, I thought, pulling in a deep breath. I have something to share, I said, letting my gaze flick between my parents. The room immediately hushed, the light-hearted chatter cut off like a switch had been flipped. I laid the papers down on the table, letting them speak louder than I could. Sam's fingers froze mid-drum, and for a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. I saw a flicker of panic before he steadied himself, jaw tightening. He hadn't anticipated that the dumb sister would have the nerve to strike back. "What's this, Lisa?" His voice was tight, teetering between command and plea. I met his eyes with an unyielding stare. "Shut up, Sam. It's my turn," I said, the venom in my voice as cold as ice. My parents exchanged bewildered glances, eyes darting between us like they were trying to piece together a puzzle that suddenly had too many sharp edges. I began, laying out the story piece by piece. How Sam, with the help of his lawyer, manipulated legal loopholes to transfer the ownership of the house. Each word hit the table like a hammer, each syllable a crack in the perfect image of their golden son. Mom's eyes widened, her face turning as pale as if I'd struck her. Tears brimmed, then spilled over, racing down her cheeks as the realization took hold. Dad's expression went from confused to cold fury, a vein on his temple throbbing. "How could you, Sam? We trusted you," he barked, the tremor in his voice betraying how deeply this betrayal cut. His fists clenched until his knuckles went white. Sam's smirk dissolved completely, replaced by a pallor that rivaled the tablecloth. He opened his mouth, but the cacophony drowned him out. Mom's sobs, Dad's accusations, my own ragged breath as I waited for this moment to sink in for everyone. It was utter chaos, a storm of betrayal, anger, and raw truth. And in the center of it all, I watched Sam's face, saw the dawning horror that his days of deception were over. The golden boy, the perfect son, had finally met what he feared most. Being unmasked, exposed, his pristine facade shattered for all to see, Sam sat there, scrambling for any vestige of his trademark charm. But every word that stumbled out was flimsy, hollow. "Mom, Dad, it's not what you think. I was just trying to help," he said, eyes darting from me to the incriminating papers. Help? With help like that, who even needs enemies? But his pleas met an unmovable wall. My parents were too far gone to hear him. Mom sat there, tears streaming down her face, eyes wide and disbelieving as if the world she had carefully constructed had been ripped apart. Dad, the man who had always seemed unshakable, now sat slumped, shaking his head, the lines of disappointment etched so deeply into his face, it looked as if they could bend steel. "Sam, we trusted you. You were our pride," Dad whispered, the words barely holding together. It was a statement that hit Sam harder than a shout ever could. I saw the way his jaw tensed, the way his fists clenched ever so slightly, as if ready to lash out at me, the one who had torn down his facade. But Dad's eyes kept him pinned, frozen like a deer caught in blinding headlights. This was it. The moment of reckoning. The golden boy, the pride of the family, revealed as nothing more than a selfish liar. And for a heartbeat, I saw it in Sam's eyes. A flicker of realization that maybe, just maybe, he'd gone too far this time. The room seemed to hold its breath as Dad's hand pointed to the door. "Leave," he said, quietly, but with the force of an avalanche. Sam didn't argue. He stood, shoulders hunched, as if the weight of his own actions had finally crushed the last of his pride. His career ambitions, his pristine reputation, all of it fell away, evaporating like frost on a sun-drenched morning. He looked back once, eyes glassy and hollow, then stepped out, the click of the door sealing his fate. The silence that followed was oppressive, pressing down on us all like a heavy blanket. But beneath it, there was a sense of release, A realization that the family we'd known had shifted irreversibly. Everything had changed, and none of us would be the same again. Life, after that confrontation, moved at a pace that felt like the scriptwriter of our family saga had finally given us the ending we deserved. My parents, once blind in their adoration of Sam, seemed to wake up from a long, misguided dream. Mom no longer glanced at old family photos with that rose-tinted nostalgia, as if they were relics from a time when Sam was still the protagonist of our family's story. Now, when she looked at me, her eyes were softer, warmer, like a mug of hot tea on a stormy day, a kind of connection that felt both new and long overdue. Dad was a more complicated case. The man who had spent his life stowing his emotions behind a fortress of silence began to show cracks. He started showing real interest in my life, asking questions about my job, my day, my plans. For the first time, I felt like more than an afterthought. Sometimes I'd catch myself staring at him, half expecting him to revert to his distant, unreadable self, wondering if this new attentive father was real or an actor in disguise. And Sam? The golden brother whose confidence once filled every room now walked with a stoop, a shadow of the man he used to be. The applause that had always met his arrival was replaced by silence, punctuated by whispers and knowing glances. Watching him move through life now, I felt no sympathy. If anything, I thought, Karma's doing her job, buddy. Every time I saw his hollow, vacant stare on the street. For the first time, I felt my own strength bloom. No more compromises, no more waiting for validation that never came. The realization that justice, though delayed, had been served filled me with a fresh sense of purpose. It was like stepping out of a stifling room into open air for the first time. I made myself a promise. Never again would I allow anyone to use me or my family as pawns in their game. I wasn't just a player anymore. I was holding the pen, writing the narrative. And in my story, there was no room for schemers or pretenders.